Strait of Hormuz, 28 kilometers east of Qeshm Island, 3:47 in the morning. One U.S. Air Force A-10 Thunderbolt II was flying low over the shipping lane. 5 Iranian F-14 Tomcats were moving in from Bandar Abbas to cut it off. Both sides knew this narrow waterway controls one of the most important oil routes on Earth. The A-10 looked exposed. That was the point. It stayed below 900 feet and held a steady speed just above 300 knots. No escort showed on Iranian radar. No jammer announced itself. No fighter sweep appeared ahead of it. To the Iranian crews, it looked like a slow attack jet had entered the worst possible place without cover. The 5 Tomcats were not weak opponents. Iran had kept them alive for decades through hard maintenance, salvaged parts, and careful upgrades. Their AWG-9 radars could still search far beyond the horizon. Their crews trained for interceptions over the Gulf and the Strait. Each aircraft carried long-range missiles built for killing before the other side ever saw the launch. At 3:49, the lead Iranian F-14 locked the track. 4 more crews confirmed it from different angles. The picture seemed simple: 1 slow target, 5 interceptors, clean sky. That picture was already wrong. 42,000 feet above the Tomcats, 2 U.S. Air Force F-35A fighters had been orbiting in silence for 38 minutes. Their radars were quiet, their passive sensors were working the whole time. They had watched every Iranian launch, every turn, every radar sweep, and every radio call since the Tomcats left the runway. The A-10 pilot knew exactly where the stealth fighters were. The Iranian pilots did not. At 3:51, the 5 Tomcats split into a loose trap. 2 moved ahead to cut the A-10 from the east, 2 stayed wide to the south. The 5th held back high as support and missile cover. It looked smart, it looked disciplined, it looked like a kill box forming around a slow aircraft with no way out. The A-10 did not react, it did not climb, it did not turn away, it did not dump flares. It stayed on course over black water and scattered ship lights. Inside the cockpits of the Tomcats, that calm looked like confusion, it looked like fear, it looked like an American pilot who either saw nothing or had no good answer. At 3:53, the lead F-14 dropped lower and pushed faster. His wingman tightened the angle from the south. A 3rd Tomcat stayed high and offset to watch for support. The last 2 widened the net. Now the A-10 was covered from 5 directions. Iranian forces had created exactly the geometry they wanted. The target still showed no change that should have raised alarm. Instead, it fed confidence. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was never built for air combat. It was built to attack tanks, trucks, and troops near the front line. It is tough, heavily armored, and deadly against ground targets, but it is not the aircraft anyone expects to win a fighter engagement over open sea. Its top speed is low, its profile is large. Against a modern interceptor, it should be in deep trouble. Against 5 F-14 Tomcats closing together, it should have been finished. That belief came from real capability, not empty pride. The F-14 was designed to defend fleets at long range. Its AWG-9 radar was built to look far, track many targets, and guide heavy missiles before the enemy reached launch distance. The AIM-54 Phoenix was the center of that idea. It was large, fast, and dangerous against aircraft that stayed predictable. Iranian crews had trained for years around that old strength. Search first, lock early, fire from advantage, end the fight before the other side gets a vote. The A-10 came from a different world. It carried a GAU-8 Avenger cannon with enough force to tear armored vehicles apart. It could absorb damage that would destroy lighter aircraft. It could fly low for long periods and stay stable under pressure. Those strengths made it perfect bait. It looked threatening enough to matter, weak enough to tempt, and slow enough to trap anyone who rushed the intercept. Above both sides, the F-35s brought the new rules. Their strength was not one missile or one radar mode. Their strength was sensor fusion. Each pilot saw one merged picture built from passive detection, radar returns, electronic warning data, and constant machine support inside the cockpit. That meant the crews did not have to solve separate clues under stress. They started the fight with answers already organized. The Iranian Tomcats still had speed and reach. The Americans had clarity. In a short air battle, clarity usually wins first and wins hardest. Around then, tanker crews below saw only running lights and dark shapes overhead. They had no idea they were under a live interception. That detail mattered later. Civil traffic kept moving through the strait while both sides built firing solutions above it. The fight was fast, but the setting was crowded, narrow, risky, and dangerous for every ship and crew in the water below. At 3:55, the rear Iranian Tomcat climbed above 27,000 feet and activated a stronger radar search to check for distant support. He found nothing. That was the trap working exactly as planned. F-35s are not invisible in a magical sense. They are simply built to shrink their radar return so far that older systems struggle to detect them at useful range. Against the Iranian picture that night, the sky still looked empty. The Tomcats were now inside a fight they did not understand. At 3:57, the lead Iranian pilot called weapons free. One F-14 started a missile solution from the northeast. Another prepared from the south. The A-10 still flew straight, no hard turn, no climb, no brake. On the Tomcats displays, the target looked helpless. On the F-35 pilot's screens, the entire scene looked complete. They had range, they had bearing, they had altitude. They had speed for every Iranian aircraft in the formation. They knew which Tomcat was about to fire first. They also knew the exact moment to end the illusion. At 3:58, the first Iranian missile came off the rail. The launch changed everything in less than 2 seconds. Both F-35s switched from silent tracking to active attack. Their APG-81 radars lit up. Their electronic warfare systems came alive. 5 Iranian cockpits filled with warning tones almost at once. Not one new target appeared on their radars, just threat alerts from directions that had looked empty a moment earlier. Confusion hit immediately. The lead Tomcat rolled hard left. The southern Tomcat broke low. The support aircraft high above stopped its search and turned north. The 2 outer aircraft tried to spread wider and build separation. None of them had a clear picture. No, all 5 now knew one thing. The A-10 had not been alone for a second of this mission. At 4 o'clock, the first AIM-120 AMRAAM left an F-35 at high altitude. Seconds later, a second AMRAAM followed from the other stealth fighter. The F-35s did not need to rush. They already had the energy advantage, the altitude advantage, and the information advantage. The Iranian Tomcats were fast, but they were reacting late. Their formation had been built for trapping prey, not surviving a hidden counterattack from above. The first AMRAAM targeted the high-support F-14. It had the best radar picture among the Iranian aircraft and the worst chance to escape. The pilot tried to notch. He dropped chaff and turned across the threat line against older radar-guided weapons that might buy precious seconds. Against an active missile supported by modern tracking, it was not enough. At 4:01, the missile struck behind the cockpit and tore the Tomcat apart. Burning pieces fell into the Gulf. The other 4 crews saw the flash. They did not see the shooter. That missing fact broke the fight. The Iranian forces now had 4 Tomcats left, but no stable plan. The lead aircraft canceled its own second missile shot. One Tomcat dumped altitude and ran west, Another turned northeast toward the coast. The two closest to the A-10 tried one last fast pass to force the American pilot lower and maybe finish the job at short range. The A-10 still did not panic. It dropped another 200 feet, banked slightly, and kept moving. That small move ruined the first Iranian missile. Without clean geometry, the weapon lost the track and passed wide. At 4:03, the second AMRAAM reached the southern F-14. That crew had gone low and fast, hoping sea clutter would help. It did not. The missile hit the right engine, fire rolled back across the tail. The Tomcat stayed in one piece for 3 more seconds, then broke apart and hit the water. 2 Iranian fighters were gone, 3 remained. The A-10 was still flying. The Tomcat crews now faced the worst condition in air combat. They were no longer fighting an aircraft, they were fighting missing information. The A-10 was below them, the F-35s were above them. Warning tones kept changing. Their radars were working, but the sky on the screens did not match the danger in their ears. That gap between what the crew sensed and what was actually there became fatal. At 4:05, one of the remaining F-14s made the boldest move of the night. Instead of running, it accelerated straight toward the A-10 and prepared for a close shot. The logic was simple: kill the bait, force the hidden fighters to react, maybe expose one, maybe open a path out. It was aggressive, it was reasonable, it was also too late. One F-35 dropped lower and launched an AIM-9X Sidewinder from off-angle position. The missile did not need the Tomcat centered ahead. It turned hard after launch and drove straight into the Iranian fighter as it rolled into attack. The hit cut the left wing route and sent the aircraft spinning. The crew ejected. 2 parachutes opened. The burning Tomcat slammed into the sea at 4:06. At 4:07, the last 2 Iranian F-14s finally did the only smart thing left. They ran for home at full power. One went northwest toward Bandar Lenge. The other turned directly for Bandar Abbas. They jinked. They changed altitude. They dumped chaff. They called warnings on every channel available. Iranian forces on the ground heard panic, broken reporting, and missile alerts from aircraft that still could not name what was attacking them. The F-35 pilots stayed disciplined. They did not chase blindly. They separated duties. One held high cover and watched the escape routes. The other stayed closer to the A-10 and guarded the airspace around it. This is where modern air combat becomes cruel. A fight can end long before every aircraft is destroyed. Once one side loses the picture, the rest is often controlled by whoever still understands the map. The 2 surviving Tomcats were fast, but speed alone was not enough. Their missiles were powerful, but range meant little without clean targeting. Their radars were active, but activity is not the same as awareness. At 4:09, the northern F-35 fired another AMRAAM at the Tomcat heading for Bandar Lenge. The shot came from high and behind. The Iranian pilot tried to dive and drag the missile into thicker air. He almost made it work. Almost. The AMRAAM detonated close enough to shred the tail and rupture both engines. The Tomcat rolled inverted and hit the water 14 kilometers south of Larak Island. 4 Iranian F-14s had now been removed from the fight. 1 remained. At 4:11, the last Tomcat crossed back toward Iranian coast and dropped below 2,000 feet. The pilot used every move he knew: hard turns, short climbs, sudden descents, full throttle, then brief reductions. He was not trying to win anymore. He was trying to make the Americans spend time, fuel, and weapons. The F-35s let him go. They had already made the point. The A-10, still low over the shipping lane, banked west and resumed its patrol line. It had never fired a shot. It had never used its GAU-8 cannon. It had never released a single flare. Its role that night was simple and dangerous. Be seen, be tempting, stay alive long enough for the trap to close. That part of the mission had worked almost perfectly. By 4:14, Iranian air defense sites near the coast were active, but late. Ground radar crews searched harder. Command posts asked for bearings, altitudes, and identities. The answers did not come together. Reports described a low American attack jet, 5 Tomcats, sudden warning tones, missiles from empty sky, 2 ejections, fires over water, and at least 1 aircraft missing without clear wreckage position. In the middle of that confusion, the surviving F-14 kept flying inland with a story few commanders would want to hear. He and 4 other crews had set a trap around one of the slowest combat aircraft in the American inventory. Then the sky above them had opened and removed the formation piece by piece. At 4:18, the 2 F-35s turned south, reduced emissions again, and disappeared from the Iranian picture a second time. That detail mattered almost as much as the kills. Iranian forces could explain a sudden ambush, they could explain bad timing, they could explain poor luck. What they could not easily explain was how the threat had arrived, attacked, and left while staying mostly outside every usable radar picture they trusted. The numbers from the clash were severe. 5 Iranian F-14 Tomcats entered the intercept, 1 returned with battle damage, but still flyable. 4 were lost over or near the strait. 2 Iranian air crew were killed in the first destruction, 2 more were killed in the second, 2 survived ejection and were later recovered. The fate of the crew in the 4th aircraft remained uncertain for hours. The United States lost no aircraft, the A-10 returned untouched, both F-35s returned without damage. Iran believed 5 Tomcats against 1 low A-10 meant control. Iran believed the sky was empty except for the target in front of them. What actually happened was different. The target was bait, the empty sky was full, and the fight was decided before the Tomcats reached firing range. In modern air combat, the side that sees the whole picture does not need the bigger formation, it only needs one good trap.